Hello, my name is Jasmine, and oh my god, I'm so sorry, Froggy. Mwah. There you go. Anyway, like I was saying, oh, oh, ah, hmm, ah. Anyway, like I was saying, my name is Jasmine, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the importance of Princess Tiana, and basically the importance of representation in media as a whole. Okay, on a more serious note, I have a confession. Don't cancel me, okay? Do not cancel me! Basically, I've been sleeping on Princess Tiana for about a decade. Yep, I know, okay?
Y'all angry, y'all upset, y'all cursing me out.
Look, okay, as a kid, I watched The Prince and the Frog, much like everyone else, and I enjoyed the movie. It actually is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. But Princess Tiana as a character was never in my top list of Disney princesses. And I'm a Disney fanatic, okay? I love Disney movies. I love Disney productions. I don't like Disney the company, okay? We don't fuck with Disney the company over here. My most favorite aspect of Disney is the Disney princesses. I've been obsessed with them since I was a kid. But Princess Tiana was not my favorite princess for a long time. You know, my favorite princess of all time has always been Cinderella. And then when Princess Tiana came around, all of a sudden she was so many people's new favorite Disney princess. Specifically, a lot of little black girls, she became their favorite Disney princess. But I was not a part of that group for some reason. My top 5 Disney princesses list has pretty much been roughly this: Cinderella, Jasmine, Pocahontas, Aurora. Princess Tiana was not even in my top 5, which is a crazy, crazy statement to say. Looking back, she was kind of the best one. She was definitely top 5 material. This video is about Princess Tiana, and for good reason. I've basically been thinking a lot about black representation in the media, well, representation in the media as a whole, specifically black representation, a lot of which had to do with the conversation surrounding the new Good Times reboot on Netflix. I can make that its, own video. But basically, the general consensus was the representation in that specific piece of media was like, it was not good. So I was just thinking about what's some good representation in the media. And I started realizing as I was going through YouTube looking at videos, I was trying to look for specific videos that all had one thing in common. Can you guess what that one thing is? People that looked like me. And then that kind of got me thinking, representation is important. This is something that goes without saying. It's important to see people on TV, people on social media, people everywhere who look like you. Accurate representation is very good, is very needed. Representation that is inaccurate can be very harmful because it can plant negative stereotypes into people's heads, people who are not a part of that group, and it can even affect how people in the group view themselves as well. So representation, specifically in the black community, has always kind of been so-so. One example that comes to mind is the whole minstrelsy thing that has happened in America for years and years and years. A lot of people think that minstrelsy is only something that happened like on stage, and it was only something that happened like years and years and years ago in early America, and it's something that we're past as a society. But this is actually not the case, because minstrelsy, much like various other forms of racism, continue through different generations. Minstrelsy was not something that was only on stage, it was also in cartoons and TV. For example, Betty Boop, one of my favorite characters of all time. I love her a lot. In her cartoon, there was examples of this kind of minstrelsy as well.
A colorful three!
These kinds of portrayals of Black people are still prevalent in media today, not in the same ways. They can be a bit more subtle. This was also in advertising in brands like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, which we still have today. Anyways, that's, bad stuff. Princess Tiana was the beacon of light that basically came, saved the day, and cured racism. That was a joke, obviously. She didn't cure racism, and the movie The Princess and the Frog, it has its downsides as well. It is not a perfect piece of media, but it is an example of an overall good piece of accurate representation that was beautifully done about Black people, specifically Black American women, which is what I just happen to be, so I'm gonna talk about it. Okay, so I've talked about all of this stuff so far, and I basically didn't talk about Princess Tiana very much, so if you haven't seen the movie The Princess and the Frog, it came out in 2009. It was a traditional 2D animated movie produced by Disney. It basically followed Tiana, who was a poor Black woman living in the South, specifically Louisiana, in the 1920s. She is basically saving up so that she can have her own restaurant because that's what she's dreamed of as a kid. With her father, her entire life, her friend Lottie, who is a white socialite, who's very rich, she's throwing a ball because Prince Naveen is coming to Louisiana, so they're hosting a party in his honor. Dr. Facilier comes and turns Naveen into a frog. He tricks him into this shady deal. Tiana goes to the party and she meets Naveen, who is in frog form. Naveen is looking for a princess to turn him back into a human, so Tiana agrees to kiss Naveen, but the spell doesn't work and she ends up turning into a frog herself. They spend the rest of the movie trying to become human again, and of course at the end of the movie, Tiana gets her restaurant and they both become human again, and they fall in love because it's a Disney movie from 2009, so there needed to be a romance storyline. So yeah, that's basically the movie. It's very good, and if you haven't seen it before, what are you doing? Go watch it. Princess Tiana is, at least in my opinion, good representation because she broke a lot of stereotypes with her character. The Jezebel stereotype basically is the notion that Black women are really promiscuous, that they are just very sexual beings, they sexualize themselves and they throw themselves at everyone. This is a trope that The Princess and the Frog breaks because it shows Tiana as not chasing a man, she's chasing her dream. She does have a love interest who she does get with at the end of the video. But he was not her main goal. She rejected him multiple times. I mean, she was not pursuing him at all. Their romance was very natural. It happened gradually over time, over the span of 3 days, basically. But kind of a long time for a Disney movie. And they connected on something deeper. It wasn't just based on physical attraction. So it portrayed Tiana in a positive light in that regard. The Jezebel stereotype comes from the sexualization of Black women and our bodies. I think back to slavery times where Black women would be routinely and systematically assaulted sexually. Their bodies were something that was seen as grotesque and weird, but it was also something that was very sought after and desired. It became a projection that was projected onto black women, and then in the culture that followed, to the stereotype of black women having lots of kids by multiple fathers or baby daddies. Black women are very critiqued for the way that they dress and the way that they carry themselves. This is something that is a big problem in the black community. It even happens to young girls. If you've ever heard a black person calling a little black girl fast, or saying that little black girls can't do X, Y, and Z because they're acting too grown, it is all basically the effects of that negative stereotype that even affects members of our community as well as the way that other people in society view us. So I think that's why it was really important and really cool to see Princess Tiana being portrayed as a woman who didn't need a man. Now, she came just before the era of Disney girl bosses that pretty much started a few years later with Frozen. The Disney girl boss era basically is where they have a heroine who doesn't need a man, so think like Elsa, Moana, and that girl from Wish, whose name I can't remember. That era of Disney honestly feels kind of forced, but with Tiana it felt very natural, and I don't know if the creators were intentionally thinking about these things when they made her character, but it came off as her being very strong, independent woman. And that reminds me of another stereotype that often is targeted towards black women, but more specifically towards dark-skinned black women, which Tiana is. And this is a stereotype of dark-skinned black women, dark-skinned curvy black women, or dark-skinned muscular black women are manly. They're not feminine, they're brutish. With Tiana, they did not portray her this way. Though she was portrayed as very hardworking and very independent and strong, it never came off as she was undesirable or not feminine. She, had these moments where she would be vulnerable. She had moments where she would get, all glammed up. Like, her femininity and her beauty was never in question.
Look at you! Ooh, aren't you just as pretty as a magnolia in May?
Even though she was a dark-skinned black woman with Afrocentric features, she had a wide nose, she had big lips. She was still beautiful. This stereotype comes from just the negative views of black women and their bodies. It also comes from racist pseudoscience saying that black people are more closely related to monkeys than other races. This resulted in people interpreting Afrocentric features as looking more animal-like, and dark-skinned black women unfortunately get the brunt of this. If you've ever seen those cartoons of Serena Williams, people basically calling her a man. Meg the Stallion is another example. She gets this treatment as well. Another stereotype that the movie breaks is the lazy stereotype. Tiana was anything but lazy. That was not an insult you could say about her. A lot of the time, black people are seen as unintelligent, lazy, unambitious, poor people. And the movie really breaks that stereotype by showing a black woman who is chasing her dreams. And I find that to be very powerful. When people think of black people, they usually tend to think of black women especially negatively. So to see Princess Tiana in this role, it was very refreshing, and I think that that's really important because her character is just really good. Her character all around is just amazing. She's beautiful, she's smart, she's independent. She was just really good representation as a whole. So before I end the video, I also just want to talk about the accurate portrayal of Black American culture. At least in my opinion, I think that they did a very good job of portraying our culture. And this is something that I think is also important. When you're, showing different people, it's important to show accurate representation of their characters, but also accurate representations of their culture as well. So I have another confession.
You know what? This is really scary.
When I was a kid, I didn't think that I had any culture. I thought that as a Black American, I just existed. I knew that I participated in American culture, but I didn't know that there was a such thing as Black American or African American culture. I grew up in the South around a lot of Mexicans. I had a lot of Mexican friends. I went to school with a lot of Mexican people, and I was often, immersed in their culture. Things like Cinco de Mayo, Mexican Day of Independence, and Dia de los Muertos at school. And I would go to their quinceañeras and things like that, and I would eat their food, and no one questioned it. Like, Mexican food was Mexican food. Mexican music was Mexican music. These holidays were Mexican holidays. Mexican culture was something that was very sacred and held in high regard where I came from, and it was very celebrated, as it should be. But I felt like I didn't see that with Black culture. Like, at school, I celebrated Black History Month, but it didn't seem to be tied to culture because it was celebrating the people specifically. I didn't think I had culture. I was like, there's no food that's specifically for Black people, because a lot of the food that I saw Black people eating was just kind of deemed as Southern cuisine. I was like, well, I don't think that Black Americans really have music because I saw rappers of every race. Same with the fashion. I was like, things that Black people wear, everyone wears. There's nothing that is just specifically for Black Americans. I saw other Black people in the diaspora who had their own separate cultures that were identifiably theirs, that were held just for them. So I didn't think that I had any of that. But obviously that isn't true. I eventually grew up and understood that there is a such thing as a Black American culture. It is just unfortunately not really taught or held in the same regard as other cultures. In America, Black American culture is either not talked about at all or it's demonized. Growing up, it was gang violence, inappropriate fashion, over sexualized media, unhealthy food. That's what I always pretty much internalized. But I feel like The Princess and the Frog is a really good example of showing Black American culture in a positive light. For example, one highlight of this movie is the music. The music in this movie is really, really good, and they basically have a lot of jazz, and it's, celebrated. It's lively, and it's just very beautifully done. Another thing that was really good about the portrayal of the culture in this movie was the food. I'm not from Louisiana, I'm from Texas, but I do know a lot of people who are from Louisiana, and I've had a lot of Cajun food, and it's really good. Everyone around here loves it, so I love that they didn't portray the food in that movie to be bad or unhealthy or low class. They portrayed it as something that was celebrated. Princess Tiana made her food and it tasted good. They made a point to talk about how the food was something that incited community. It was something that brought people together. It was something that made people happy. And even just little subtle things like that. Like, there's a scene in the movie that is really important because them showing the community aspect of the ritual of eating food together was also something that I found was prevalent in other cultures, which is another reason why I didn't think that I had culture. So I was like, no one ever talks about how, food brings Black people together, but there's a big community culture surrounding food in Black culture. I think of things like Juneteenth. My family specifically cooks every Juneteenth. We have our foods that we eat during Thanksgiving and Christmas that are Black foods. We make soul food in these holidays, so I'm trying to say. Black churches often have food events, and that's another thing where they bring community together. It is a positive aspect of Black culture, which is something that, I don't know, I just found to be very charming about this movie and its portrayal. Another thing that this movie does is the fact that it does bring up the hardworking nature that is very prevalent in the Black community. Contrary to the stereotype, It is a very common notion in the Black community that you're supposed to be hardworking. A lot of the times that's pushed. Hustle culture is very big in the Black community. You are supposed to, work hard for your education. You're supposed to work hard to get money. You're supposed to have a bunch of side hustles. As Black people, we're fed this idea of the American dream. A phrase that is often used in the Black community is, as a Black person, you have to work twice as hard just to be seen, just to be recognized. And this is another thing that we see in media a lot. I can't even count the amount of times that I've heard a character say something along those lines, like think the speech in Hidden Figures, for example. And I think what this movie does is it brings up that issue in the Black community because, like I said, Tiana's character is basically that of someone who has this hustle mentality. Tiana herself works 2 jobs. She works all night and then she gets up and she works all day, and she basically does not have time to dance. She doesn't have time to mingle. She doesn't have time to find a romantic partner.
Girl, all you ever do is work.
She just, in her head, thinks that she has to work really hard. And the good thing that this movie does is it basically points out the downsides of this way of thinking. Because she doesn't have time for anything or anyone else, you can see the toll that it's really taken on her. And I like that this movie basically is saying to the audience, look, it's good to work hard towards your goal, but that's only half of it. You still have to maintain yourself and make time for relationships and other things in your life.
Never, ever lose sight of what's really important.
What's the point of having this if you're not happy? Now, that is not to say that this movie is without its critiques. The biggest glaring critique that I have with this movie, myself much as others, which you've probably seen this online discourse before, is the fact that Tiana spends the majority of the movie as a frog. This is a big issue because it just strips her of her humanity and her dignity, and relating it back to what I said earlier about Black people not being seen as human, it's just kind of weird.
Huh?
Do I think that this movie was trying to imply that they didn't see Black women as human beings? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it's weird and it's very distasteful to do this. Granted, this is something that Disney has done before. It's not something that they've done exclusively with Tiana or with Black people, but it is something that happens again in another movie. Technically a Disney movie, it's a Pixar movie, but technically it's Disney as well. Soul. This movie also has a Black protagonist. They're like two of the only pieces of Disney media, Disney/Pixar media, that has Black main characters. And they both turn to animals.
But it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Well, okay, technically in Soul, his soul gets into the body of a cat. But it's the same thing. They do not have to do that. They get points deducted for that, okay? But anyways, yeah. I basically said all this to say that Princess Tiana is a beautiful, amazing,
show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique
princess. She deserves to be in my top 5. She deserves to be in my top 3. Okay, I think I'm gonna officially rearrange my list of favorite Disney princesses now. And I'm gonna put her at the top. Okay, she's going at the top. She's my number 1 favorite Disney princess now. No one asked. This is not like a big national announcement. It literally doesn't matter. But it does matter, okay? It matters to me. So yes, after spending a lot of time not giving her her flowers, I'm giving her her flowers today. Okay, I love you, Tiana, and I love you for the impact that you've made on little Black girls everywhere. Thank you for that. Mwah. I don't know how to conclude this. Do you like my little outfit? Also, did you like Froggy? I don't even know if he really is giving frog. He's a frog. I got him at the fair years ago. I won him. And so I love him for that. Thank you for watching this video if you did, and thank you for making it all the way to the end if you did. That makes me really happy. You should definitely subscribe to my channel if you want. It's okay if you do. It's okay if you didn't too, but it'd actually be really nice if you did. Yeah, I'd like to know y'all's opinions about this if you watch this, and if you want to comment, like, who's your favorite Disney princess, or your feelings about Princess Tiana or the movie, or any thoughts about what I spoke about in this video, that'd be cool. I'd love to hear from you. Just gonna end the video. I hope you have a good day. Bye!